Have you ever looked at an old photograph and felt like something was off? Today, we're diving into one of the most unsettling photographic mysteries from the early 20th century. A seemingly innocent portrait of a young woman that has puzzled historians, collectors, and paranormal enthusiasts for decades. What starts as a simple vintage photo reveals layers of mystery that no one has been able to fully explain. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. The antique shop on Maple Street in Salem, Massachusetts, had been a fixture of the town for over 40 years. Its owner, Robert Chen, had seen thousands of items pass through his hands: furniture, jewelry, books, and countless photographs. Most were unremarkable, dusty remnants of lives long forgotten. But in March 2019, something different arrived. An estate sale from the old Whitmore mansion brought boxes of miscellaneous items. The mansion, built in 1885, had stood empty for 3 years after the last descendant passed away with no heirs. Among the boxes of moth-eaten linens and tarnished silverware, Robert found a leather portfolio containing approximately 30 photographs from the early 1900s. He sorted through them casually at first: family portraits, landscapes, children playing in Victorian gardens, the usual fare. Then he reached a photograph that made him pause. It was a formal portrait of a young woman, probably in her early 20s, seated against a plain backdrop. The photo quality was excellent for its era, professionally taken in what appeared to be a studio setting. The woman wore a high-necked white blouse with delicate lace detailing, her dark hair styled in the Gibson girl fashion popular around 1910. Her expression was serene, almost contemplative, with dark eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera. Everything about the image was perfectly ordinary for the period, except Robert couldn't shake an inexplicable sense of unease. He set it aside and continued with his work, but found himself returning to the photograph throughout the day. There was something compelling about it, though he couldn't articulate what. That evening, he posted it on his shop's social media page with a simple caption: "Beautiful portrait from circa 1910. Anyone recognize the photography studio or the subject?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Comments poured in, but they weren't about identifying the woman or the studio. Instead, people were asking about the necklace. Robert picked up the photograph again, this time examining it more closely with a magnifying glass. Around the woman's neck was a delicate chain, barely visible against the white lace of her blouse. Hanging from it was a pendant, and as he focused on it, his skin prickled with goosebumps. The pendant appeared to be circular, made of what looked like tarnished silver or pewter. But it was the design etched into its surface that caught everyone's attention. The symbol was unlike any typical Victorian jewelry motif. It resembled a wheel or compass, but with irregular spokes radiating from a central point, and what appeared to be strange markings or letters around the outer edge. Robert's daughter, Emily, a graduate student in American history at Boston University, drove up that weekend to see the photograph. She brought equipment from her university's digital imaging lab, high-resolution scanners and photo enhancement software typically used for archival research. When they enlarged and enhanced the image, the details became clearer and more disturbing. The symbol wasn't decorative jewelry at all. The markings around the edge appeared to be deliberate, possibly letters or glyphs in an unfamiliar alphabet. The spokes weren't evenly spaced, and at certain points they seemed to form additional smaller symbols. Emily documented everything meticulously. She photographed the back of the original print, where faded pencil markings indicated E.H., June 1910, Boston. No photographer's stamp, no studio mark, just those cryptic initials and a date. If you're enjoying the video so far, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Over the next few weeks, the photograph went viral. Paranormal websites picked up the story. Amateur historians debated its significance in online forums. Some claimed the symbol matched occult imagery from various traditions. Others insisted it was simply unusual jewelry from a forgotten craftsman. But nobody could identify the woman, explain the symbol, or determine why such an unsettling artifact would be worn so prominently in a formal portrait. Dr. Margaret Ashford had spent 30 years studying American Victorian and Edwardian photography at the Smithsonian Institution. When a colleague forwarded her the viral photograph from Salem, she was skeptical. The internet was full of hoaxes and misidentified images, but professional curiosity got the better of her, and she requested high-resolution scans from Robert Chen. What she saw surprised her. The photograph was authentic. The paper stock, the albumin print process, the tonal qualities all consistent with professional portrait photography from 1908-1912. There were no signs of digital manipulation or modern reproduction. This was a genuine artifact from the early 20th century. Dr. Ashford began her investigation methodically. She started with the pencil notation on the back. E.H., June 1910, Boston. She compiled lists of photography studios operating in Boston during that period, cross-referencing them with surviving archives and collections. Most major studios of that era had distinctive stamps or embossed marks on their work. The absence of such marking on this photograph was unusual but not impossible. Some smaller studios or itinerant photographers didn't always mark their work, especially if the client purchased the print directly. The initials E.H. presented another puzzle. Were they the subject's initials, the photographer's, or someone else entirely? Dr. Ashford searched census records, city directories, and newspaper archives from Boston in 1910, looking for young women with those initials who might match the approximate age and appearance of the subject. She found dozens of possibilities. Emma Harrison, a schoolteacher; Elizabeth Hughes, daughter of a merchant; Evelyn Hammond, who worked at a textile factory. Without additional identifying information, narrowing down the subject seemed impossible. Meanwhile, the symbol itself became the focus of intense speculation. Dr. Ashford consulted with colleagues in religious studies, anthropology, and art history. She sent detailed images to experts in Victorian jewelry and decorative arts. Professor David Winters from Yale's Department of Religious Studies examined the enhanced images carefully. "It's not any mainstream religious symbol I recognize," he explained during a video call with Dr. Ashford. "The circular design with radiating elements appears in various cultures, sun symbols, wheel motifs, compasses. But these specific markings around the edge, I can't place them." He continued, adjusting his glasses as he studied his screen. "What's interesting is the apparent deliberateness. This wasn't mass-produced jewelry. The irregularity of the design suggests it was custom-made, possibly hand-engraved. Someone went to considerable effort to create this piece." Dr. Ashford reached out to occult historians next. This proved more problematic, as the field attracted both serious scholars and enthusiastic amateurs who sometimes saw significance where none existed. However, a few credible researchers offered intriguing observations. Dr. Sarah Blackwell, who specialized in 19th and early 20th century American spiritualism and occult practices, noted that the period was ripe with various mystical movements. The late Victorian and Edwardian eras saw explosive interest in spiritualism, theosophy, secret societies, and esoteric traditions, she explained in an email. Boston was a particular hotbed of such activity. Groups like the Hermetic Order, various Masonic lodges, and countless smaller organizations existed. She examined the symbol carefully, but couldn't definitively match it to any known organization or tradition. It shares elements with several different symbolic systems, hermetic, alchemical, possibly influenced by ceremonial magic traditions. but it's not an exact match for anything in my research. The mystery deepened when Dr. Ashford discovered something else. Using specialized imaging techniques, she examined the photograph under different light spectrums. In infrared imaging, faint markings became visible on the backdrop behind the woman, markings completely invisible to the naked eye in regular light. They appeared to be symbols similar to those on the necklace, drawn or painted on the studio backdrop. But why would they be invisible in normal viewing, and why include them at all? Robert Chen, meanwhile, had been investigating the photograph's provenance. The Whitmore mansion's history was well documented in Salem's Historical Society. The family made their fortune in shipping during the mid-1800s. The last resident, Clarence Whitmore, had been a reclusive bachelor who died in 2016 at age 92. Clarence's grandfather, Edmund Whitmore, had been the mansion's original owner. Edmund had traveled extensively in his youth, Europe, the Middle East, parts of Asia. He returned to Salem in 1895 and built the mansion, filling it with artifacts from his travels. Could this photograph have been part of Edmund's collection? If so, what was its significance to him? And who was the woman wearing the mysterious symbol? Leave a comment below about what you think of this story so far. 3 months after the photograph first surfaced, a woman named Grace Morrison contacted Dr. Ashford through the Smithsonian's website. Grace's message was brief but compelling. "I believe I know something about that photograph from Salem. My great-grandmother kept a diary that mentions a similar symbol. Can we talk?" Dr. Ashford arranged a video call immediately. Grace, a retired librarian from Portland, Maine, appeared on screen holding a worn leather journal. "This belonged to my great-grandmother, Catherine Morrison. She lived in Boston from 1908 to 1914, working as a seamstress." Grace opened the journal carefully, its pages yellowed and fragile. Catherine wrote about many things: her work, her friends, daily life. But there are several entries from 1910 that always puzzled our family. She began reading, her voice steady. "June 15th, 1910. Saw Eleanor again today. She wore that pendant, the one that troubles me so. When I asked about it, she only smiled and said it was a gift from someone who understood her true nature. I don't know what she meant. And her eyes had that distant look they get when she speaks of her meetings. I worry for her." Dr. Ashford felt her pulse quicken. "Eleanor. E.H. Could be Eleanor with H as a last name. Did your great-grandmother mention Eleanor's surname?" Grace flipped through several pages. "Yes, here. Eleanor Hartley. She and Catherine were friends, both worked in the same dress shop on Newbury Street. But look at this entry from August. August 3rd, 1910. I haven't seen Eleanor in 3 weeks. Mrs. Patterson at the shop says she simply stopped coming to work. No notice, no explanation. I went to her boarding house on Charles Street, but the landlady said Eleanor moved out in July, paid through the end of the month, and left no forwarding address. It's as if she vanished." Grace continued reading several more entries, each expressing Catherine's growing concern for her missing friend. Then, in October 1910, October 21st, 1910, something strange happened today. A man came to the shop asking about Eleanor. He was well-dressed, probably 40 years old, with an intense manner that made me uncomfortable. He showed me a photograph. Eleanor, sitting for a portrait, wearing that pendant. He asked if I knew what it meant. I said no, which is true. He said, "Perhaps that's for the best," and left. I felt frightened, though I can't say why. The final mention came in December 12th, 1910. Read in today's paper about a woman's body found in the harbor, unidentified, been in the water for some time. I can't stop thinking it might be Eleanor, though the police say they have no leads. I pray I'm wrong. That pendant haunts my dreams. Dr. Ashford requested copies of the diary pages. She immediately began searching Boston newspaper archives from late 1910 for reports of unidentified bodies. The search yielded disturbing results. On December 9, 1910, the Boston Globe reported, "Body of young woman found in harbor. Police seek identity." The article was brief, providing few details beyond the discovery near Long Wharf and the victim's approximate age, 20s, and description, dark hair, slender build. No identification was ever made, according to follow-up articles, but there was more. Dr. Ashford found 3 additional cases from 1909-1911 of young women who disappeared in Boston under mysterious circumstances. None were definitively connected, but all shared certain similarities. They were in their 20s, lived alone or in boarding houses, and seemed to vanish without warning. One case particularly stood out. In March 1911, a brief article mentioned that police were investigating whether several disappearances might be related to cult activity, though no details were provided. The investigation apparently went nowhere, as no further articles appeared. Dr. Ashford contacted Boston Police Department's historical archives, but records from that era were incomplete. Many files had been lost in a warehouse fire in 1955. Meanwhile, collectors and historians began reporting other photographs with similar symbols. A dealer in New York found a cabinet card from 1909 showing a group of 6 people, all wearing pendants with variations of the same design. A museum in Philadelphia discovered a daguerreotype from their collection, previously uncatalogued, featuring a man with a ring bearing comparable markings. None of these photographs included identification of the subjects, all dated from roughly the same period, 1908 to 1912, and all originated in northeastern cities, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Providence. Dr. Ashford compiled everything into a comprehensive report. The evidence suggested a network or group of some kind, spanning multiple cities, active in the early 20th century. The symbol appeared to be their identifier, worn openly, yet somehow remaining obscure enough that no mainstream historical record acknowledged its existence. But what was the group's purpose? Why did Eleanor Hartley disappear? And why did whoever collected these photographs, possibly Edmund Whitmore, preserve them? The questions multiplied faster than the answers. If you found this content interesting, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me continue researching these mysteries. Dr. Ashford's research reached a critical point when she discovered a connection to Edmund Whitmore himself. Digging through Salem Historical Society's archives, she found his personal correspondence from 1910-1915, donated by his estate decades after his death. Most letters were mundane, business matters, social invitations, family communications, but one box, labeled Personal Restricted until 2016 per Edmund's will, contained more intriguing material. Among the letters was correspondence with someone identified only as LV. The letters, written in educated but cryptic language, discussed meetings, initiations, and something called the work. One letter from November 1910 mentioned the recent difficulties in Boston and advised Edmund to maintain discretion regarding our practices. Another letter dated January 1911 was more explicit. "The photographs you requested have been secured. I trust you will safeguard them, as they represent both our triumph and our tragedy. E.H. served the work faithfully, but her fate reminds us that understanding requires sacrifice." Dr. Ashford felt cold reading those words. E.H. Eleanor Hartley. The letter seemed to confirm that Edmund Whitmore knew her, possibly was involved in whatever group she belonged to. She found one more significant item, a small journal in Edmund's handwriting, dated 1895-1900, documenting his travels. The entries described visits to various locations in Europe and the Middle East, but interspersed throughout were sketches and notes about symbols, rituals, and mystical practices he encountered. One page featured a drawing remarkably similar to the symbol on Eleanor's necklace. Edmund's note beside it read, "Encountered in Istanbul, 1897, the Brotherhood of the Eternal Cycle. They claim this symbol represents the continuous nature of existence, the wheel of transformation." Fascinating metaphysics, though I question their methods. So Edmund had encountered the symbol abroad and possibly brought knowledge of it back to America. But had he founded a group himself or joined an existing one? The evidence was unclear. The journal contained more disturbing passages. In an entry from May 1898, Edmund wrote, "Attended a ceremony in the catacombs beneath the old quarter. What I witnessed challenges everything I thought I understood about human consciousness." The symbol, when properly invoked, seems to create an alteration in perception. The members claim it opens doorways, not physical, but psychological. I must learn more. A later entry from September 1899 showed growing concern. I begin to understand why this knowledge was kept hidden for centuries. The transformations I've observed in long-term practitioners are profound, but not always beneficial. Some lose their connection to ordinary life entirely. Others speak of visions that haunt them, yet they continue, driven by something I'm only beginning to comprehend. Dr. Ashford photographed every page, her hands trembling slightly as she documented Edmund's descent into whatever world he discovered. The final entry from his travel journal, dated February 1900, simply stated, "I return to America tomorrow. I carry the knowledge, but I pray I have the wisdom to use it properly. The symbol will come with me, whether I wish it or not." She hired a genealogist to trace Eleanor Hartley's family. The search revealed that Eleanor was born in 1888 in Worcester, Massachusetts. Her parents died in a factory fire when she was 16. She moved to Boston in 1906, working various jobs before settling at the dress shop where Catherine Morrison knew her. No death certificate for Eleanor Hartley existed in Massachusetts records. She simply disappeared from all official documentation after June 1910. The genealogist found one more intriguing detail. Eleanor had a younger brother, Thomas, who enlisted in the army in 1917. His service records included a notation that he listed no living relatives. So by 1917, whatever happened to Eleanor, her brother considered her gone. But there was more. The genealogist discovered that Thomas Hartley had kept a small box of personal effects, now in possession of his descendants. When contacted, Thomas's great-grandson agreed to let Dr. Ashford examine the contents. Inside the box were letters, military medals, and a single photograph, Eleanor as a young teenager before she moved to Boston, smiling naturally at the camera. There was also a sealed envelope marked, "Not to be opened." Thomas's great-grandson explained that his grandfather had passed down the box with strict instructions that the envelope remain sealed, though no one knew why. After considerable discussion and with proper legal precautions, they decided to open it. Inside was a letter in Thomas Hartley's handwriting, dated 1954. "To whoever reads this, my sister Eleanor disappeared in 1910. The police said she probably ran away or met with an accident, but I knew better. Before she vanished, she'd changed. She spoke of things that made no sense. Hidden truths, transformation of consciousness, a brotherhood that would unlock her potential. In July 1910, I received a letter from a man who wouldn't give his name. He said Eleanor had crossed over and that I should stop looking for her. He enclosed a photograph of her wearing a pendant with a strange symbol. He said she'd achieved what she sought, but the price was everything she'd been before. I searched for years. I found others who'd lost family members the same way. Young people who'd gotten involved with some group, worn that symbol, then disappeared. Most families like mine never got answers. In 1923, I met an old man in Providence who claimed to be a former member of what he called the Cycle. He was dying and wanted to confess. He said the group promised enlightenment through their practices, meditation, rituals, study of consciousness. But he said it went too far. People lost themselves trying to transform. Some died. Others simply became different. He said Eleanor was one of those who went all the way, whatever that meant. He wouldn't explain further. I don't know if my sister is alive or dead. I don't know if what that old man said was true or the ramblings of a guilty conscience, but I know she's gone, and that symbol took her from me. I kept her photograph as a warning. The world is full of people who promise hidden knowledge and transformation. Some of those promises have a price no one should pay. Thomas Hartley. Dr. Ashford sat in her office late into the night, reading and rereading Thomas's letter. She cross-referenced it with everything else she'd discovered. The pieces formed a disturbing picture, though the complete image remained frustratingly out of focus. In April 2020, she received an unexpected email from a man named Peter Hartley in Chicago. He'd seen articles about the photograph and recognized the surname. "I believe Eleanor Hartley might be my great-great-aunt," he wrote. "My grandfather rarely spoke about his family, but once mentioned an aunt who went missing in Boston and that the family never discovered what happened to her." Peter shared what little he knew. Family whispers about Eleanor being involved with strange people, and that after she disappeared, her brother Thomas refused to discuss her. The family eventually stopped mentioning her name entirely, as if speaking it might invite whatever took Eleanor to return for others. But Peter had one more piece of information. His grandfather had mentioned once, when very old, and perhaps not thinking clearly, that Thomas had encountered someone in 1947, a woman who looked remarkably like Eleanor, though she would have been nearly 60 by then. She was in New York, Thomas had said, and when he approached her, she looked at him without recognition and walked away. Thomas followed her to a building in Greenwich Village, but when he went inside, there was no sign of her. The building's residents claimed no one matching her description lived there. Thomas convinced himself it couldn't have been Eleanor, just someone who resembled her, his grief playing tricks on him. But Peter's grandfather always wondered, if it was Eleanor, what had happened to her in those 37 years, and why wouldn't she acknowledge her own brother? Dr. Ashford investigated further. She found records of a building in Greenwich Village that had been home to various artistic and philosophical groups in the 1940s. One group, calling themselves the New Cycle, held meetings there from 1945 to 1949. Newspaper accounts described them as eccentric philosophers interested in consciousness studies and metaphysics. The group disbanded in 1949 after a member died under mysterious circumstances during what other members called a meditation exercise. Police investigated, but found no evidence of foul play. The death was ruled accidental, though the circumstances were never fully explained. After that, the group scattered, and no further trace of them appeared in public records. Dr. Ashford found one photograph from a 1947 newspaper article about alternative spiritual movements in New York. The grainy image showed a group of people leaving a building, possibly the Greenwich Village location. In the background, barely visible, was a woman whose silhouette and posture bore a striking resemblance to Eleanor Hartley's photograph from 1910. It was impossible to be certain. The image quality was poor, the angle wrong, the distance too great. But the similarity was enough to make Dr. Ashford wonder if Thomas Hartley had truly seen his sister that day in 1947. Transformed by decades of whatever practices the group followed, living a life so removed from ordinary existence that she couldn't even recognize her own brother. Dr. Ashford compiled everything into a comprehensive report spanning over 200 pages. The evidence suggested that Eleanor Hartley and others were part of an organization or movement in early 20th century America, identifiable by the symbol they wore. Edmund Whitmore was connected to this group, likely as a founding member or key organizer after bringing knowledge from his travels abroad. The group appeared to practice some form of consciousness exploration, meditation, ritual, study of altered states. For some members, this led to profound psychological changes. Eleanor Hartley disappeared in summer 1910, possibly by choice, possibly not. Her fate may have been part of a larger pattern involving other young people who sought transformation and found something far more destabilizing than they anticipated. The group apparently disbanded or went deeper underground after 1912, possibly due to scrutiny from authorities or because of tragedies like Eleanor's disappearance. But it may have resurfaced periodically under different names, the New Cycle in the 1940s, and possibly other incarnations that left no trace. Critical questions remained unanswered. What did the group actually do in their practices? What was the work mentioned in the letters? Was the transformation they sought psychological, spiritual, or something else entirely? Did Eleanor Hartley die in 1910, or did she live for decades as a fundamentally changed person, unable or unwilling to return to her former life? And most haunting of all, what did the symbol truly represent? Was it merely an identifier, or did it hold some deeper significance that the practitioners believed could actually affect consciousness and reality? Dr. Ashford presented her findings at a conference on American occult history in late 2020. The response was mixed. Some scholars praised her meticulous research and careful documentation. Others criticized her for giving credence to what they considered fringe beliefs and conspiracy theories. One elderly professor approached her after the presentation. He was emeritus faculty from Brown University, a specialist in religious movements. "I knew someone once," he said quietly, "in the 1960s. An old woman, must have been 80 or more. She lived near the university, kept to herself. I was a graduate student, and we'd occasionally talk. She had the most unusual perspective on consciousness. Spoke about it like she'd experienced things no one else had." He paused, seeming to debate whether to continue. "One day I noticed she wore a pendant under her clothes. It slipped out once when she reached for something. I only glimpsed it for a second, but it had a symbol I'd never seen before. Circular, with irregular spokes, strange markings. When I asked about it, she tucked it away and changed the subject. After that, she avoided me. A few months later, I heard she'd died. No family, no funeral. The landlord cleaned out her apartment and found almost nothing, as if she'd lived there for years, but left no trace of herself." "Did you ever learn her name?" Dr. Ashford asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The landlord called her Miss Hartley. I never knew her first name." He met Dr. Ashford's eyes. "Could be coincidence. Hartley's not an uncommon name, but after hearing your presentation, I thought you should know." Dr. Ashford investigated. Providence, Rhode Island, near Brown University. She found death records from 1969 for an Eleanor Hartley, age listed as approximately 85, no known relatives, died of natural causes. The description was minimal, the burial in an unmarked grave in a municipal cemetery. If it was the same Eleanor Hartley, and the dates would align almost perfectly, then she had lived to old age, carrying her secrets and the symbol that defined her existence. She had survived whatever transformation the group promised, but at the cost of everything else: family, identity, connection to the world she'd known. Or perhaps it was simply another Eleanor Hartley, and Dr. Ashford was seeing patterns where only random chance existed. The uncertainty was maddening and somehow fitting. Some mysteries resist solution not because the evidence doesn't exist, but because the truth is so far removed from ordinary understanding that even when we glimpse it, we can't quite grasp what we're seeing. The photograph continues to hang in Robert Chen's antique shop in Salem, now protected behind museum-quality glass. It's become something of a destination for people interested in historical mysteries and unexplained phenomena. Robert has had offers to purchase it, some quite substantial, but he refuses to sell. "It belongs here," he explains to visitors. "It's part of a story that needs to be remembered, even if we don't fully understand it." The shop has changed since the photograph went viral. Robert created a small exhibition area around it, displaying copies of the documents Dr. Ashford uncovered, historical context about early 20th century America, and information about the search for Eleanor Hartley. He's careful to present it as an open question, rather than making definitive claims. Visitors come regularly, drawn by the mystery and the unsettling quality of the image itself. Some report feeling uneasy when viewing it for too long, though they struggle to explain why. The photograph is, objectively, just a portrait of a young woman. The technical quality is good. The subject is conventionally attractive. There's nothing overtly disturbing about it. Yet something in Eleanor's expression, the set of her shoulders, the way her dark eyes seem to look not at the camera, but through it. Something creates a profound sense of disquiet in many viewers. It's as if she knew, when the photograph was taken, exactly what was coming and accepted it completely. Others insist they see additional details in the image that weren't visible before. A woman from Connecticut claimed she could make out faint text in the background, though enhanced imaging revealed nothing. A man from New Hampshire said the symbol on the necklace seemed to have more detail than the actual photograph showed, as if his mind was filling in information that wasn't there. Dr. Ashford maintains her research files at the Smithsonian, though she's largely moved on to other projects. The Eleanor Hartley case remains her most famous work, cited in numerous books and articles about American mysteries. She occasionally receives new tips or information from people who claim family connections to the mystery. Most leads go nowhere, but a few have added intriguing details. In 2021, a woman in Oregon contacted her about a grandmother who had been part of some kind of consciousness group in San Francisco in the 1930s. The grandmother had worn a pendant with a circular symbol until the day she died in 1982. After her death, the family couldn't find the pendant anywhere, despite searching her belongings thoroughly. It had simply vanished, as if it had never existed. In 2022, a dealer in rare books discovered a privately printed volume from 1908 titled The Eternal Cycle, Practices for Consciousness Transformation. Only 3 copies were known to exist. The book described meditation techniques, ritual practices, and philosophical perspectives on the nature of consciousness and reality. The author was listed only as a student of the work. Most intriguingly, the book included a diagram of the symbol, identified as the mark of the cycle. The text explained, "This symbol represents the eternal nature of transformation. To wear it is to commit oneself to the journey beyond ordinary